For over a month, we've been stress testing the new M4 and M4 Pro Mac Minis. And not only have we tested 16 games, native Windows and emulated console games, which we covered in this video right here, but we've also been doing a lot of real-world testing. And we've tested things that I don't believe any other reviewer has, like Apple Intelligence, local LLMs, AI video upscaling, and much more, to see how good these new Mac Minis really are. Oh, and the reason this video took us forever to make is that aside from the Ultra chips, we've also tested every single Apple Silicon chip, from the M1 all the way to the M4 Max. So here's an in-depth analysis of what you can truly expect from the M4 Mac Minis performance-wise. Okay, now before doing our real-world testing, we wanted to get some baseline performance numbers, which we did via Cinebench. Also, our Mac Minis are the base configurations of the M4 and the M4 Pro chips, likely the ones that most of you would be buying. Okay, so after running the Cinebench R24 multi-core test, the base M4 Mac Mini scored almost twice as much as the M1 and 40% more than the M3 MacBook Pro. In fact, it even managed to outperform the M3 Pro and M1 Max chips. Whereas for the M4 Pro model, the results were even more impressive, as it got really close to the M3 Max level of performance. And keep in mind, this is the base 12-core M4 Pro Mac Mini rather than the more expensive 14-core version. Now, after about 5 minutes of running the Cinebench test, we wanted to measure the chip's temperatures to see how hot the machines got. And we can see that the M4 Mac Mini was running at an average of 86 degrees Celsius, or 11 degrees hotter than the old M2 Mac Mini. Now, the M4 Pro model was running even hotter at 91 degrees compared to 88 on the old M2 Pro Mac Mini. However, both temperatures were lower than the MacBook Pros, especially the M2 Max and M1 Max versions, so I don't think these temperatures are anything to worry about. We've also then measured the external chassis temperature using our FLIR 1 thermal camera to see if this smaller chassis of the new Mac Mini had a negative impact. And interesting enough, while the chassis of the M4 Mac Mini was 3 degrees hotter than the previous M2 Mac Mini, the chassis of the M4 Pro Mac Mini was 6 degrees cooler, and more than 10 degrees cooler when compared to the MacBook Pros. Which means that while the M4 Pro chip itself does get quite hot, the fan inside the Mac Mini is actually powerful enough to dissipate all of that heat quickly, which I'm really happy to see, especially in this smaller chassis. Okay, now that we've got this out of the way, let's move on to the actual real-world testing. We started this with transferring 180 gigabytes of files from our brand new USB 4 external SSD. That's got about a 3 gigabyte per second transfer speed. This included 4,431 folders with over 25,000 images. With the M2 Mac Mini, Apple used a single NAND chip, reason why it took the longest here at 59 seconds. However, Apple is now using two 128GB NAND chips even on the base model, reason why it was much faster at 29 seconds for the M4. Surprisingly, this was slower than the M3 and M1 Max. However, the M4 Pro Mac Mini was much faster at 21 seconds, beating literally every other Mac that we had tested. Strangely enough, even the M4 Max MacBook Pro with 1 terabyte of storage. And of course, the more storage you get, the faster the speeds will be, as Apple will be using more NAND chips in RAID 0. We then moved on to Blender, where we rendered a classroom demo scene using the CPU with Metal RT turned on. And here, the base M4 Mac Mini outperformed the M3 Pro, the M2 Pro, and the M1 Pro chips. Plus, it even outperformed the M1 Max by being more than a minute faster. And keep in mind, this is the base $599 M4 Mac Mini model. That's just insane. But things get even crazier when we look at the M4 Pro version, which was more than 2 minutes faster than the M3 Pro, M2 Pro, and M1 Pro, and almost matched the performance of the M3 Max. The M4 Max was the fastest, but keep in mind, that's literally a $4,000 machine, whereas the M4 Pro Mac Mini is just $1,400 and only a minute behind. We then rendered the same scene again, but this time using the GPU, which is really the weakest part of this Mac Mini, since the GPU maxes out at 20 cores as opposed to over 30 cores like on our Max chip devices. And I gotta say, I was even more impressed here. The base M4 Mac Mini was almost 4 times faster than the M1. This is because we're using ray tracing here, which only the M3 and the M4 chips support. But even then, the M4 still managed to outperform the M3 by close to 20%. And then when I looked at the results of the M4 Pro Mac Mini, I was honestly left speechless, as it got extremely close to the performance of the M3 Max chip that has almost double the GPU cores. Like, how is this even possible? How can the M4 Pro chip be so good with significantly less GPU cores? Well, we do have some video editing tests to further test this. Also, a quick thanks to our sponsor, Clean My Phone, created by the team behind Clean My Mac, my go-to utility app on macOS. This year, I've traveled a lot, so I've been using Clean My Phone after each trip, as I don't need duplicates of each shot, which is something that I usually take. I only need one shot, which is the good one, and Clean My Phone can easily do that for me. The interface is super user-friendly, showing screenshots, screen recordings, duplicates, and blurry photos that can all be removed in seconds. It can also sort portraits, pets, food, travel, and text photos automatically into theme-based folders, which makes looking back at memories so much easier. And everything is also processed on device, so your personal images and info only stays with you. Check out Clean My Phone for free for the first 3 days on iPhone and iPad by using the link below. Okay, so on to our video editing tests. In Final Cut Pro, we took our iPhone 16 Pro Max versus S24 Ultra versus Pixel 9 Pro XL project, which is really one of our most complex projects of 2024. It's over 19 minutes in length, with tons of side-by-side shots, callouts, and tons of intensive effects, such as our flicker removal plugin. And we exported this in H.264, and the results were honestly shocking. The base M4 Mac Mini was almost 3 times faster than the base M3 MacBook Pro. How is that even possible? Like, how can we get a 3 times improvement in just one generation? Well, the answer is quite simple, and that is RAM. The M1, M2, and M3 machines only have 8 GB of RAM on the base versions, whereas the M4 now comes with 16. And this is why we're seeing such a big difference here, as RAM also acts as video memory on Apple Silicon Macs, which is extremely important, of course, when you're editing videos with lots of intensive plugins like we do. And this is how the base M4 managed to reach the export speeds of the M1 Pro chip, whereas the M4 Pro Mac Mini outperformed even the M1 Max and was only 1 minute slower than the M2 Max and M3 Max. Now, the reason why the M4 Pro Mac Mini was not faster than the M2 Max and M3 Max MacBook Pros here, like we saw in our previous tests, is because the Max chips have 2 video encoders and 2 video decoders rather than just one, so exporting is usually much faster on these chips. However, the sheer performance of the M4 Pro is what brings it so close to the M2 Max and M3 Max, which I'm really happy to see. Now, before we move on to our LLM and Apple Intelligence tests, there is one last non-AI test to do, and that is Lightroom. First, we've imported 1,000 photos into Lightroom, all of them being from our previous smartphone camera comparisons. This took the M4 Mac Mini 36 seconds to import, so considerably faster than the M3, M2, and M1 machines, and matching the speed of the M2 Max. The M4 Pro Mac Mini was even faster at just 27 seconds. In fact, the only machine that was faster than that was the M4 Max MacBook Pro, taking just 18 seconds. Then we applied our preset, which included some lighting adjustments, some curves, color grading, effects, noise reduction, and more, which we applied to all 1,000 images. And surprisingly, this took almost the same amount of time on all machines, which was about 6 minutes and 20 seconds. The only ones that took longer were the M1 Pro MacBook Pro at 7 minutes and 40 seconds, and the M1 Max at 7 minutes and 13. The M4 and the M4 Pro Mac Minis were only 2 seconds apart. But okay, the real test is of course when it comes to exporting all of these images, now with all of these presets applied. The M4 Mac Mini was twice as fast as the M3. Once again, that extra RAM does make a huge difference. In fact, the base M4 even outperformed the M1 Pro, M2 Pro, and yes, even the M1 Max that had double the amount of RAM thanks to its more powerful CPU. The M4 Pro version then performed even better, as it was more than twice as fast as the M1 Max, and even outperformed the M2 Max by 22 seconds. So really, if you're working in Lightroom, you're going to get close to an M3 Max level of performance from the base $1,300 M4 Pro Mac Mini, which is just insane. But okay, now on to the fun part, AI. Apple claims that the M4's neural engine is more than 3 times faster than the M1's, which means that all AI workloads, including Apple Intelligence, should be faster here. So let's see if that's really the case. We gave each machine my M4 Mac Mini gaming benchmark script, which is just over 2,400 words, and we've asked them to make it more concise. This took the M4 Mac Mini 36 seconds, as opposed to 58 on the M3 and 55 on the M1, with the M4 Pro chip being faster by 4 seconds, despite having the same neural engine. So my guess is that having that extra 8 gigabytes of RAM could actually make a difference. It's also worth noting that we cannot really see how many tokens per second we get using Apple Intelligence. Tokens are essentially words or characters separated by spaces. For example, in the sentence, "Hello, I'm Daniel," this one has 4 tokens, one for each word. And this is something that we can fairly easily see when running local LLMs. Plus, some of our other machines compacted my script in different ways and at different lengths, which is also something to keep in mind. But still, looking at all of these results, we can definitely see a trend with the M4 chips having the fastest neural engine. Waiting 30 seconds to make your document more concise as opposed to about 1 minute is a fair difference, which you will notice if this is something that you do multiple times every single day. Now, onto the big boys, local LLMs. We first ran Llama 3.1, the 8 billion parameter model, locally through Ollama. We gave it a prompt, "Hello," and we wanted to see how many tokens per second each machine could generate. And while the neural engine does play a big part in running local LLMs, an even bigger part is played by the amount of RAM you have available, as well as its bandwidth. And here, the M4 Mac Mini got 22.3 tokens per second, close to double of the M1. However, the M4 Pro got 46, likely due to having more RAM. We can see how the M4 Pro matched the M1 Max with 32 gigs of RAM, but failed to match the M2 Max and M3 Max, and especially the M4 Max, which had a whopping 78 tokens per second, likely thanks to having the fastest and the most amount of RAM out of all of our machines. We've then measured the total response time, so the time it took for each machine to display the complete response. And here, the M4 Mac Mini was twice as fast as the M1. Now, some of the results were a bit weird, like the M2 Pro being faster than the M4 Pro. Now, that's because each machine gave a slightly different response, some of them shorter, some of them longer, which is why tokens per second is usually a more accurate way of measuring an LLM's performance. And we can see that overall, the M2 Max, M3 Max, and M4 Max were the only machines capable of responding fully in about half a second, likely thanks to having at least double the amount of RAM compared to all the other machines. Then we wanted to have even more fun, so we gave Llama 3.1 my M4 Mac Mini gaming benchmark script to summarize. And we can see how, once again, the M4 Mac Mini had almost double the tokens per second compared to the M1, whereas the M4 Pro had almost double the tokens compared to the M4 thanks to having more RAM. However, here, all the Max chips were quite a bit better, once again proving that more RAM is extremely important when running a local LLM than just having a more powerful neural engine. Now, in terms of the actual response time, it took the M4 Mac Mini 26 seconds to summarize the whole script, which is actually pretty good. This was once again twice as fast as the M1. The M4 Pro was even faster at 15, however, the Max chips, with a weird exception of the M3 Max, were all faster. The M4 Max, for example, only took 9 seconds, which is really impressive for an over 2,400 word script. But okay, we're not done yet, because we wanted to see if any of these machines could theoretically handle a 70 billion parameter model that usually requires at least 64 gigs of RAM. Well, we can see that only the M4 Max with 48 gigabytes of RAM was able to generate an acceptable number of tokens per second. The rest were basically unusable. Just to give you guys an idea, it took the M4 1 hour and 13 minutes to give us a full response to our prompt "Hello." Weirdly enough, the M4 was much faster here at 40 minutes, but keep in mind that this is mostly to do with the model giving you a different length response each time you ask it something. And out of all of these machines, the only one that was actually usable with the 70 billion parameter model was the M4 Max MacBook Pro, which responded in just 2 seconds. So there you go. If you want to run any large local LLMs, make sure that you've got at least 48 gigabytes of RAM here, ideally 64 or even more. Now, there was one last test that we wanted to run, and that was video upscaling using Topaz Video AI. So we gave each machine a 720p 30 fps video file that we shot with our iPhone and upscaled it to 4K. We first tried using Topaz's Proteus model, an all-purpose model, and here, once again, just because of the 8GB of RAM limitation, the M1, M2, and M3 machines performed terribly, with the M4 Mac Mini being more than 7 times faster. The M4 Pro was then 30 seconds faster than the M4. However, it was not able to outperform any of the Max chips in this case, as this is once again another workload that heavily favors having more RAM, with 32GB literally being the recommended amount. We've then also tried Topaz's RIA model, which is designed specifically for 4x upscaling and is both CPU and GPU intensive. And here, surprisingly, there wasn't as much of a difference between the M4, M3, M2, and M1 devices. So it doesn't seem like this model is as RAM intensive. The M4 Pro Mac Mini was close to twice as powerful as the M4, but once again, the Max chips were considerably faster here. Also, do you guys see this beautiful wintry wallpaper behind me? That's from our new wallpapers pack, Winter Wonderland, by our talented designer, Ollie. This pack is perfect for the winter season, featuring 10 gorgeous 8K designs that will look incredible on your phone, tablet, or even desktop. Now, if wintry vibes aren't your thing and you prefer something a bit more abstract, we've got Ether Arcs by our designer Haneen. Created entirely in Blender, Ether Arcs offers 10 minimal and vibrant designs that look absolutely stunning on any device. I'm actually using Ether Arcs on my phone right now, and as you can see, it works perfectly with Apple's depth effect as the clock even slides behind it. You can find both packs and close to 130 more in our app Wallpapers for iOS and Android. Links down below. So, in conclusion, what have we learned from all of these tests on all of our devices? Well, we've learned that synthetic benchmarks never really paint the full picture, because from the benchmarks alone, the M4 Pro Mac Mini outperformed every single Mac chip that came before it, including the M3 Max and even the M2 Ultra. But when you run some real-world tests, you'll see that things are a bit more complicated every single time. Final Cut, for example, takes advantage of the dual encoders inside the Max chips. And other tasks like running local LLMs or upscaling videos do require a lot of RAM. In which cases, an older M1 Max chip with 32 gigs of RAM will actually perform better than an M4 Pro with 24 gigabytes of RAM, despite the synthetic benchmarks showing the opposite. However, at the end of the day, the really impressive thing here is that a $600 base M4 Mac Mini can actually compete in some cases, like Blender rendering or Lightroom exports, with the M1 Pro and M2 Pro chips of before, and even surpass the M1 Max, which was, back in the day of 2021, $3,500 on a MacBook Pro, and that is just mind-blowing. And if you get the M4 Pro version for $1,300, you can easily bump the RAM to 48 or even 64 gigabytes, which by the way you cannot do on a MacBook Pro, and then likely get a similar level of LLM performance as the M3 Max and M4 Max chips for less than half the price. But yeah, what do you guys think? Are you picking one of these M4 Mac Minis up, or are you waiting for the next M4 Max Mac Studio? Let me know down below. And if you have enjoyed this video, it did take a very long time to make, so a like and sub would be very appreciated. And stay tuned for more. I'm Daniel, this is ZONEofTECH, and I'll see you guys in the next one. ZONEofTECH, signing out. Cheers.